wanted you to see this car because it is a typical project that people might start with. There are some things that you should do right up front to save yourself a lot of aggravation and maybe some cost. So here's some things that I would suggest you do. First of all, start with a good set of tires, because you have to have this thing where it'll roll around. You can see that we bought 2 sets of tires, 4 tires, a whole set. And here's the first thing we ran into. The tires in the front were 15s, the tire in the back were 14s. What does that mean? Well, the diameter from here to here is a 15-inch tire and a 14-inch tire. And we want to have tires that are the same on both front and rear. So we had to order a couple of wheels. Then the next thing we found out was we didn't have enough lug nuts. So we bought all new lug nuts. We cleaned the studs up on the wheels so the lug nuts fit well. And now the next thing that we're doing is trying to get this car in a position where we can determine if it's worth fixing it, if it's not, what we need to do to make it something that this customer can drive. So let's look up under the hood right here. So here's some of the things that I'd suggest that you do. The first thing you want to do, of course, is change the oil and filter on it. And you want to make sure that it's got some coolant in it. And you can see that the radiator hose on the upper part of this and the bottom parts of the radiator are not even hooked up. So that's something that we're going to have to do, and then put some coolant in it, and hopefully it'll hold enough coolant so that we can drive it. I mean, not drive it, but just start it so that the engine will warm up and we can see if there's any leaks or knocking or any noises. So that's the first thing you want to do, is change your oil, get some coolant in it, and after you change the oil, remove the distributor and put a mechanical gauge where your oil pressure sending switch is, and spin the oil pump until you get enough oil pressure on this engine that you know that it's oiled and lubed up, because this car's set about 20 or 30 years. You sure don't want to try to start it dry. So be sure that you oil it up. Be sure you put some zinc in there. And as you remember from my other videos, if you add zinc, you add zinc after the engine's started. Don't put it in until the engine's running. Now, the next thing you want to do is get a good battery. So we've got a brand new battery here. We have not hooked it up. And the first thing you want to do is put your negative cable on first, and take your positive cable right here and spark it against that positive post. And if you see a big old spark there, then you know you've got a bad short. If you leave this hooked up, you're probably going to burn up the wiring inside your car or under the hood or under the bottom. So in this case, we don't have a spark. If you do have a spark, you can go down and buy a fuse and make a connection for a fuse between the battery and the battery cable so that it's hooked up like this. So that if there's a problem, it'll pop the fuse and it won't burn all your wiring. So now we're at that point. We're ready to start it. In this case, we're going to have to put another carburetor on it. You can see this carburetor is set way too long. So we've got a carburetor coming forward with a spacer plate so we can get that mounted up. We'll disconnect. We're not going to try to run off the gas tank. We're going to disconnect and run this carburetor off of an external fuel pump and a can of gas just to see if we can get it started. Before you do that, though, after you get the carburetor in, bend the motor over and make sure that you have spark for your spark plugs. And that would be right here. Here's your ignition coil. You can see that dude right there has been long gone. So this is going to take a ignition coil and probably points in a condenser. Spin it over enough till you know you have spark. Then get gas in your carburetor, get somebody inside and have them turn the key, or you can use your jumper to jumper the starter solenoid so you can start it from here. Bend it over, keep pumping it till you see fuel coming out the gas and see if it's out the carburetor until you can see if this motor is going to start. That's the very first place that you need to go to make sure that you don't have any issues. Once it's running, let it warm up real good, and then try to put it in gear, see if it goes in gear. You probably won't have any brakes, so you got to be sure to block the wheels when you do that, or leave it in park. Then you can kind of get an idea of where you need to go. Now, this car needs a whole bunch of stuff. It needs all the bushings, all the steering linkage. It'll need a water pump and an alternator and lots of things. And this is a family car. It belongs to a gentleman. He wants to fix a lot of it up himself, but he wants me to help him get it started. So that's what I'm in my shop for. So I hope that's some helpful hints, because you have to kind of have a little plan when you get ready to start an old car so you don't tear something up. I'm Barry Wilson, Wilson Auto Repair. Go to my YouTube channel, or you're already on it, I guess. Be sure to subscribe. We'd really appreciate that.